Good morning. Thank you for joining us so early on day 2 of the IC3 Conference. And welcome to California 101, Understanding the Higher Education Options in the State of California. My name is Cuca Acosta. I'm the Associate Director in the Office of Undergraduate Admission at the University of California, Santa Barbara.
Hello, good morning everyone. My name is Pranav Pradhan. I'm from Foothill and De Anza community colleges. So we have 2 community colleges in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco Bay Area. I'm the International Student Advisor at the college.
All right, good morning everyone. My name is David Ayers and with San Diego State University.
Hi everyone, my name is Adam Wu. I'm from the University of Laverne. I'm the private school rep on this panel. We are 30 minutes from Disney and 40 minutes from downtown Los Angeles.
Had to throw in the Disney, didn't you? Yeah, all right. Okay, so you know who we are. Our contact information and the PowerPoint slides will be available to everyone after the conference. So be aware that you don't have to take furious notes. We hope this will be an interactive session for you to understand the differences within the state of California when it comes to opportunities for students at the undergraduate level. We will be focusing on undergraduate education. The state of California happens to have 4 major systems of education. Those systems of education happen to have a fun number of about 200 plus universities in the state of California alone. So the California Community College system now has 114 accredited schools. The California State University system happens to have 23 accredited schools. The University of California has 9 undergraduate schools, and then private and independent colleges, well, they total over 70. They sort of, have this great magical number. So again, over 200 options for your students in just one state, the state of California in the United States. A lot of this comes, and the reason why there are systems is because the state of California back in 1960 created a master plan. They wanted to see universities who were collaborating, not necessarily competing. And the University of California took the lead in creating that master plan to allow different systems that had emphasis, that had purpose within them. So the master plan is supposed to be evaluated every decade. It hasn't been, so we're doing okay. Things are going well. But essentially what we're trying to do is to give a system, a network of campuses, a clear opportunity to showcase their talents. So in the instance of the University of California, we teach theory. Who, what, where, when, why, how, and we practice research. Right? In the system of the California State Universities, it's applied learning. So as we all take our niche, and we might have things that are similar against one another, the goal is to make sure that there's a network within that. Now, sometimes we play nicely like siblings. Hey, how you doing? Yeah. Sometimes we definitely compete against each other, even within our own system. And the state of California itself happens to be so diverse, and there are reasons why many of our universities want to interact and want to make sure that our future students are ready. So why California? Why should your students decide to look at any of these systems?
So the reason why students select California is because of the diversity in the state. It's a very large state. You can see that we're between the 7th and the 10th in the world for our economy, so it's a large economy. I happened to look online last night, and we are, believe it or not, above India in our economy. So it's a large state, lots of people in the state. We are the nation's leading agricultural state as well, so when everyone else in the United States is kind of freezing in the cold, we are the breadbasket. So we have fruits and vegetables, and our whole central part of the state is supplying everything for the rest of the United States as well. We have a large GDP in the country, and we are a minority state as well. So you can see the numbers here. 58% of our population is not white, which is a great thing. So we like diversity, and we love diversity on my campus as well. So we are the 3rd largest state in land mass, but we're actually the largest state as far as population. So that number keeps growing all the time. And You can see some of the fun things that were invented in California, but we also have Facebook, Apple, Google, a lot of other organizations that you're all aware of and use every day. So there's a reason why people select California. It's not just because of how large our state is and how diverse it is, but because we have so many options for education.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the California community college system. So the first thing is that the concept of community college is not really widely popular in India. So when I explain this to parents or students usually, the first thing, the first expression that I get is, okay, so what's the catch? Okay, so there's no catch in community college. The way this is how the system is designed. Just to give you an understanding, there are over 114 community colleges across California, serving over 2.1 million students. So it's the largest system of higher education in the United States. So at a community college, students come and do the first and second year of their bachelor's degree. Okay, for the year 3 and year 4, they transfer to other universities and finish the rest of the bachelor's degree over there. The reason students take this 2+2 route, primarily, number one, is because of the cost. The tuition fee at community colleges is in the range of $6,800, about 4.5 lakh Indian rupees. So it's pretty affordable for Indian students. But most importantly, to understand that there are so many of these community colleges across California, you will see that all the University of California campuses, they do give a certain priority to students who transfer from a community college. Okay. If you see some of the transfer statistics, 29% of students at the University of California campus had started at a community college. 51% of students at a California State University have started at a community college. Okay. Even about 48% of UC bachelors in the STEM majors are from a community college. Okay. So that's a little bit about community colleges.
So a little bit about the California state system. So where the community college system is the largest two-year set of programs in the U.S., the California State University system is the largest university system in the United States, four-year university system in the United States. We have about 500,000 students studying across 23 campuses. We have very small campuses with populations of around 4,000, and they go all the way up to 40,000 plus. You can see because of our range, we have from Northern California to Southern California, we have very different requirements for each one of those. Even though we have like one umbrella organizations, the Cal State system, we don't follow the exact same rules as far as admitting international students. I'll discuss that later, but we are one of the most ethnically diverse campus systems in the United States as well. And we have over 20,000 plus international students, freshmen transfers that come from community colleges in California, and then graduate students as well.
Okay. Let's keep you awake. So the University of California happens to have 10 campuses, but as I stated, 9 are undergraduate focused. All right, which campus is not there? UC San Francisco, which is mostly post-grad. For the University of California, theory, well, research. You sort of think STEM, right? No, no, no. We also happen to have arts programs, humanities programs, social science programs. There are about 700 plus majors when you add all of our campuses together. It's an opportunity for your students to find themselves, hopefully, in a passion. Their major, hopefully, will reflect an area of interest for them. Now, the University of California happens to have one set of admissions rules. We'll talk about that. But what's really interesting is that a lot of our research is creating an opportunity for undergraduate students. So we have quite a few individuals who are experts in their field around the globe. When you look at Nobel Prize winning faculty and you realize that over 60 have come from the University of California or who are teaching at the University of California, and not just teaching grad or post-grad, but many actually teach undergraduate students. That's an exciting thing for a student who's coming out of high school to understand. Students have the opportunity, of course, to practice what they're doing in laboratories or in performances if they're arts majors. But one of the wonderful things about the University of California is that we do prepare students for the post-grad experience. So if you know that your student is looking at a master's program or a PhD program, the University of California structure is such where they are prepared for post-grad admission in the United States. They can, of course, go straight into an industry or career if they want to, but they have those options between the two because of our theory-based education and the research that they're doing at the undergraduate level. Now, the 9 campuses are diverse when it comes to location. I love to brag about the fact that my campus happens to be on the water with 2 miles of private beach, but we all have wonderful, great programs and great opportunities for students. For example, when you're looking at UC Davis, that campus that's furthest north, right outside of Sacramento, our state capital, they're an agricultural arm. So within the UC system, they have agriculture. The rest of us don't. Right? When you're looking at campuses like UC San Diego all the way to the south, they actually have an amazing marine biology program at the undergraduate level. The rest of us have different versions of that. So there are unique areas for each UC campus, and we encourage you to encourage your students to think broadly about the University of California. I know that everyone in this room knows 2 campuses. You're smiling, Berkeley and LA, yes, but there are more of us. Yes, there are some wonderful campuses outside of Berkeley and LA that might be a really good fit for your students. So the University of California wants your students to look at all of us and find out what that fit could be.
All right, so as Cuca mentioned earlier, there's over 70 different private and independent universities within the state of California. Hence why there's no map on this page, because it would have been in a really small font and no one would have been able to read it. So that's just a picture of our president. So private and independent private institutions in California typically have their historical foundings within different religious organizations. Now, often many of these schools were founded over 100 years ago, like Laverne, we're over 126 years old. So while many schools have the historical background in their founding, many of these institutions now tend to be more non-denominational, so there's no required religion classes, there's no statement of faith, anything like that. I think one of the things that is beneficial, but also sometimes confusing for students applying to private universities in general, and this of course within California as well, is that every private university has their own set of admission requirements and the way they look at marks and test scores. So oftentimes I think, you know, when students will ask us questions about admission requirements or what are the processes, we always, you'll all notice, many admission representatives will start their answer with, well, it depends, right? So on the one hand, sometimes it's frustrating, can be frustrating and confusing for students because there is no one size fits all. But at the same time, I think that provides a lot of advantages for students because students are able to find institutions that are very specific to their learning needs, their specific educational goals and whatnot. And then what that means is that there are options for every student, right? So there's no one cookie cutter fits all. And again, too, because private universities do not receive state funding as part of our operating budget, we have a lot more say as to how we allocate our budget dollars. Therefore, private schools tend to have, again, it depends, but many private schools tend to have a wider variety of financial opportunities for international students, whether that be in the form of merit scholarships or need-based financial aid. And again, it's going to vary from school to school, it depends, but they tend to have a wider variety of options for international students. And again, just like the use in the Cal States, ranging in size, ranging in location, and different programs, all of the private schools, I would argue, in the US and within California as well, have specific areas that they tend to be a little bit maybe well known for, you could say. And in that sense, we're catering towards specific students with certain career and aspirational goals. And again, it requires some research on the part of the student, part of the counselor, but we all have different areas that we are very unique for. And we really do focus on the fit, again, because with the private schools as well, we're ranging in size, types of majors, the style of teaching. We're really looking for the students that we believe will thrive at our institutions. And again, a lot of times you won't discover that until you're having a conversation with the admission officer at that particular institution.
All right. So this is the fun part. Here we go. So we're trying to figure out, and we're trying to keep you entertained a little bit. So what are the admissions requirements for international applicants? Because, you know, that's really easy, right? Yeah, she's shaking her head. Good. So let's start off with asking the question to our California community colleges.
So yes, the admission to a California community colleges are pretty easy. All we need to see, well, is the application form first. Then we need an English proficiency test. So that would be either TOEFL or the IELTS. Okay? But in lots of cases, we can waive these requirements off. For example, if a student is an IB student or a Cambridge student, and if the school submits a letter that, you know, this is the curriculum that he has been studying, so we can waive off the English language proficiency requirement. Okay. After that comes the financial statements. So some colleges would want the financial statement right, you know, at the time of application. Some might ask it later. Okay. So that's the thing with financial statements. After that comes the transcripts. Okay. Transcripts, we like to look at 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th predicted grades, if that's available. And lastly, we have an application fee. So it's a pretty simple process. Yep, the next person would be.
I told you it was simple. You have a question.
No, we don't require letter of recommendation. Usually.
How many international students do you usually have?
So I can speak for my community college. We have about 3,200 international students last year. So, yeah, it's a big number.
And the financial statements, is there?
So usually when a university is asking for financial statements, you have to show the first year expense, the annual expense, not just the tuition fee, but the full annual expense will be the I-20 amount that has to be shown as readily available. Okay, so universities might look at it differently. When it's being said as readily available, it has to be liquid. Okay, so usually it is savings bank account or fixed deposits, but any form of like investment in like land or those usually are not considered.
Any other questions for the community college? All right. I'm gonna stand up, excuse me. So 23 campuses in California for the Cal States, and we share one application. We are onto a new application system this year. Last year and previous years, we are CSU Mentor application, $55 application fee for all 23 campuses. This year, we are starting Cal State Apply. It's supposed to be more intuitive. We will see when it opens October 1. So far it looks good. So still a $55 application fee for all 23 campuses. You log in, do Cal State Apply, you select the campus that you'd like to apply to, fill out your application. It's pretty straightforward for international students. And pay the $55 application fee, and your application is then forwarded to the correct university that you selected. It's a $55 application for each campus. So if you wanted to apply to more than one campus, you have to pay the $55 each time you apply to another campus. Outside of that, you need to meet the GPA requirement for your major, and so this gets a little bit tricky. So for the Cal State system, every major has a minimum GPA requirement. Some of them are 2.4, some of them are 2.8, some of them are 2.9, some of them are 3.0. That will not get you admitted to my university. This is just to apply. This is just the base. If you have that base for that major GPA, go ahead and apply. Again, that will not get you admitted to the university. This is just a baseline. So I gave some stats on my slide just to do with San Diego State because that's where I work. So we require at least a 3.0, which is about an 80% average overall. So we're looking at 10th grade exam results, and 11th grade mark sheets. So if a student applied to my university, paid the $55 application fee, they would submit their 10th grade exam results, 11th grade mark sheets, somehow clear English, which is another one of the bullet points there. And I have about 10 different ways to clear English for us, and then we would review that student for admission. For the Cal State system, we do not require an SAT or ACT, and I do not require an entrance essay, letters of recommendation, or extracurriculars. We strictly look at high school academics only. End of story. We have, yes?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So what if the school is doing MIP and is not giving the e-assessment? So would you accept the school results?
Yes, we would. Yes, we would. Yes. So I'm going to go on to the official transcripts. It gets really complicated about transcripts. We have a number of different ways that students submit them. They'll go and get their documents through a notary. We won't accept them. They'll send me a scanned copy or an emailed copy. We won't accept them. So we need official sealed copies from the high school. The high school seals it, I open it. So as long as we receive them that way, there's no problems. We also accept electronic transcripts from the high school as well, using Naviance or some kind of electronic transfer of official documents as well. That becomes the biggest sticking point for my university at the undergraduate and graduate level, is understanding how to submit official documents. So again, like Adam said, you really need to encourage your student to read what our requirements are, because where San Diego State might accept official only, one of the other Cal States might accept an unofficial document just for admissions, and if the student's admitted, then they request that official document, and we'll just use that as verification. English language, we have one of the higher TOEFL and higher IELTS requirements for the Cal States. We just think it's better. The students are more successful, but to be honest with you, I've never had a problem with a student from India meeting my English language requirement. It's never been an obstacle. I'm actually in the process right now of trying to get my campus to agree that if a student is going through IB curriculum, that will just waive it automatically without any kind of proof. So fingers crossed that will happen this year. So, and then again, SAT or ACT is optional for us. It gives you a little bit of stats right here on current. I try not to throw numbers around, but we all throw numbers around as universities. So out of the 4,700 plus universities in the US, we are one of the top 80 public universities and one of the 10 most popular, and yet we don't require an SAT or ACT. It doesn't mean that we're not a great institution if we don't require that. So that's a little bit in a nutshell. Does anyone have a question about Cal State's? Yes?
If the school doesn't have a GPA, will that be okay?
It's fine. We ask in the application that the student does their best to try to calculate their own, but when we receive those documents, we will do an official GPA calculation.
Yeah, because students do that and they send it, but that's not something which we do.
Yes. A lot of students will use like an online GPA calculation system or something like that. Believe it or not, American students do it as well. Even though their transcripts might say exactly what their GPA is, everyone tries to make it look better than it actually is. So, we will look at the documents and create the original or the true GPA.
The maths curriculum, with the California universities, we get a set of subjects, topics, and you're supposed to say which grade has the student done a certain topic, grade 1, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. Will that again come in this year?
So for my application, we don't ask students to self-report classes that they took. I just need to see, like the high school that they graduated from. It asks very kind of generic questions because international students that apply to my institution, and I'm sure the same is true for all of you, they might have 2 years in India and then their parents move and spend a year in Singapore and a year in Dubai, and all the systems are different. It becomes difficult for the student to write in every class that they took and what that grade might be for that class. So we just say, where are you graduating from? Submit all high school transcripts from every institution you attended, and then we will look at the classes they completed. Yes?
How might, I don't know if this question is okay, but how might, say, a psychology class be given to the state university
So since I went to a community college, I can address that. So the community college system is the first 2 years of university life. So you're doing your general education courses, which are across a number of different disciplines, and you're also doing the prerequisite courses for your major. So that first 2 years, it's preparing you for your final third and fourth year, where you're strictly dealing with your major, and then upper division, like research projects, internships, and things like that. The difference for us is that our psychology program is kind of hands-on. We're going to require that they take the knowledge out of their head and apply it outside the classroom. There's no reason, like become an engineer if you're sitting in a classroom. We need you to physically take your knowledge, go to an internship, complete an internship, so when you graduate, you're job ready. That's kind of like we're all about practice and job readiness. That's the Cal State system. We do prepare you to go on to graduate study, and a lot of the PhDs that we do are in conjunction with the UC system partners, but very kind of different, like Cuca said, a little bit different, theory versus kind of practice, but we both do practice as well.
So if a student has decided on a major, then would you recommend a community college?
Would I recommend it? Well, I would recommend a community college for a few different reasons, probably. One is if the student has a grade point average that is not above an 80% for my institution, then I would recommend that they go to a community college, because a community college gives the student the opportunity to bring their grades up and have a strong grade point average, meet all the prereqs for transferring, and then they're very successful. A lot of, that's the jobs of the community colleges, to make these students transferable to either a UC, a Cal State, a private.
Any other reason?
Cost. If a student is worried about cost to attend, then cost is a major factor for a lot of students. My institution does not offer scholarships to international undergraduate students. We have merit-based scholarships, but they're so difficult to get that it's just, I always tell students we don't have them. And so at a community college, it's much, much less expensive to attend for 2 years, and it gives the student kind of a soft introduction to a university experience in the US. Not that it's an easier way, but it does give them kind of a softer introduction to, like, bam, right on a campus in the US. And then the final 2 years, they would transfer to one of our institutions.
The last I would say is, if your student's unaware of what their career is and they know they want to be in California, a community college is a good way to explore quite a few different options and then find their way into a 4-year system in California. Yes. Okay, cool. I love how you're asking questions. Yes. Oh, and there's more questions. Yes.
This is with regards to community college prep. Well, could you comment on the rigor? The first 2 years of community college basically Cal State system.
So what is the rigor at a community college?
So in terms of, talking about the rigor, so, actually I do have some information about that in one of the slides, where I talk about the articulation agreements and transfer agreements and how do the transfers work. So basically, the articulation agreements which are in place make sure that the student takes exactly the required classes so that they are transferred to the appropriate university. So if the student is being transferred to, let's say, UC Santa Barbara or a CSU, that is because, he has done exactly the same level of classes. Only that's the reason why he's being accepted. So the rigor is always the same.
There was another question? No. Yes.
So if you first year of your community college, your grades are good enough, you transfer to first year itself.
So if you're looking at good grades in your first year at a community college, can you transfer into a second-year program at a university?
The thing is that transferring, you can actually transfer in the first year in some cases, but lots of times there are certain requirements that the student has to complete. Typically, it's called as the I get C track. In the for example, if you're transferring to the UCs, you need to follow this track called as I get C. Okay, there are certain courses that you'll have to take, but usually students don't transfer within 1 year, because then right after you'll start paying the higher fees right from the third year. So So usually students do the 2 years and then transfer, because the tuition fees for the first year and the second year will probably just be 4.5 lakh rupees. So that's pretty. Yes. So you see, California is pretty much all quarter system, okay, except 1 or 2 semester, quarter, semester. Okay. So a lot of the UCs are, quarter system. So in the quarter system, a bachelor's degree is 180 credits. So students can transfer with 90 credits from a community college. Perfect. We like students taking the advanced placements, and those classes are even further transferable to the UCs.
And the privates.
And the privates.
So I also wanted to address, we are a large campus. We receive about 85,000 applications per year for undergraduate students, and we admit about 7,000 students. So when you would want to apply to us, I would consider you a lower division transfer student that didn't meet my 2-year transfer requirement, and we wouldn't accept your application. That is not the case for other California states. So some of the other California states will accept what we call a lower division transfer, which is a student that hasn't completed those first 2 years. We are at impaction, and so you have to have the 2 years because we don't have the space for you to stay another year, transfer in at 2 and complete in 2 and on.
We know you're working hard.
But to add to that, to add to the fun, but there are many, if you were to do a year at a community college, there are many private and independent schools that would consider your application and would accept you. And I think for many of the private schools, specifically in California, to help make it easier for students, any course that you take at a community college that a Cal State or a UC recognizes, we will also accept for transfer credit. And we actually still award scholarships for international students transferring to a 4-year from a community college. So again, I'm going to start with that line, it depends. So for us, a student, if you have about a year's worth of credit at a community college, we would consider you as a transfer student.
Yes.
I have 2 questions. One, what's the transfer percentage from a community college to a college after that?
Okay.
And second question is, if you do not have place in the very first year, like you said, you can take 7,000 students, I want to understand what happens by the time your children come to 3rd year. How come so many children get transferred and you have space for them in the 3rd year?
Okay, question 1, what's the percentage of our transfer students? Well, so that's going to be an it depends question. I know you love the answer, it depends, but I'll state this. The University of California, the state of California is asking us for every 1 freshman that we bring into the university, for every 2 freshmen that we bring into the university, that we also bring in a transfer student. So we're in a transfer happiness mode. I love transfer. You are a handsome man right now. Bring me more transfer, right? Transfer is something that we're in a growth mode for. So I would be happy to see more students at the transfer level. State schools, percentages?
I couldn't speak to that actually because we have so many students apply, but we also deal with a thing called local admission areas. So just in San Diego alone, I have 5 community colleges that feed into my institution. If someone from his institution that is in Northern California, and you'll see in a slide later, that we didn't include my numbers because generally students stay close to where they're applying. So up in his area, San Francisco, Bay Area schools. Down by me, San Diego schools. And again, I have 5 community colleges. Each one of those community colleges has anywhere between 40 and 60,000 students trying to transfer in. And again, don't get scared by that number of 40 to 60,000 because the word community is exactly that. It teaches the community. A student that's looking to transfer, a stay-at-home mom that wants to take some classes in the evening, a retired senior citizen that wants to travel to Spain and wants to take Spanish classes, community college.
For us, we are also quite transfer friendly, I would say. So for every 3 first-year students we enroll, we actually enroll 2 transfer students. And we're a little different too in that for our transfer students, the admission decision is not based on what major they want.
And transfer means transfer from community, not from other world.
For us, that could mean from anywhere, but most of our transfer students predominantly come from community colleges. Just like how David mentioned, he has 5 community colleges very close to him. We have about 6 very close to us, typically in Northern Orange County and East LA County, where most of our transfer students are coming. But we do get transfer students from Foothill and De Anza, and that's why I get to go up there and visit.
All right, I'm going to answer the last question very generally, and then we're going to move on. So why do we have room for transfer students? Well, there are students who do find that we're not the right fit, so we have a small percentage of students who will transfer themselves out of our institution. Small percentage on my campus, for example. But also we have students who will do education abroad. We will have students that are at the upper division, not physically on campus. There is that flexibility in that 3rd year. So it's not because it's a bad thing. It's actually a good thing for some students to start off and transfer. But if you're looking at the University of California and wanting to know about our admissions at the incoming freshman level, let's talk about that. So the University of California, we have the University of California application. It is not the common application, just for your reference. Our University of California application opens in August of your student's senior year. So when they're about to graduate, 1 year before they are going to enroll with us, our application opens. August, September, and October. They can log in, work on the application, and log out with confidence. Why? Because it is 100% self-reported. We do not ask for transcripts when the student submits their application. We don't ask for a resume when they submit their application. We do not require letters of recommendation. Please stop writing them. Yes. Our application is a little more expensive, we'll tell you that right now. We're $80 per campus the student wishes to apply to. And in the month of November, the submit button in our application will open and the student will be able to say, hey, I did want to apply to UC Santa Barbara and UC Riverside and UC San Diego. Oh, and LA and Berkeley too. And they'll check those boxes. When they push the submit button, we'll charge them 80 times the number of campuses they've applied to. Now, our self-reported application will ask the student, in grade 9, what school did you attend? And what classes did you take in math, in history, in English, in science, etc. Within that application, we'll also ask, well, what grade did you earn for that class in math in 9th grade, in English, and so forth. And then we'll go to 10th grade. What did you take in year 10? What did you take in year 11? What are you planning to take through the end of year 12? Now, students can enter predicted grades, but be aware that the University of California, when students are applying, we will look at year 10 and 11 to calculate their GPA. We will do the math. Your students and you do not have to do the math in the GPA calculation. We understand the different grading systems and the different type of opportunities that your students are taking. So our international team will actually go through and look at the Indian curriculum and say, oh, here's the difference between a CBSE versus an AP versus an IB, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we are the cruel University of California who requires the SAT or the ACT. I know he said he didn't, we do. The University of California requires one of the 2 exams, and we don't care which one. Your student can take more than one exam if they wish to, and if they do, we will use the highest single day total score. So the October test versus the November test, the December test. We look at which one is the best, and that is what we will use. We know that the SAT changed, and there is now an optional essay. It's not optional. We ask that you remind your students that they have to take that essay, please. Now, with the application process, we do look at co-curriculars. We do want to know the whole student experience. So their grades and their test scores, that's important. But being at your residential campus and getting involved in your extracurricular activities is important to me. I want to be able to like your student as a human being and as a student. Co-curriculars, though, we don't have a checklist. So if your student is an athlete, awesome. If your student should never play a sport in public because it's not pretty, I still like them, right? So what is their co-curricular? Now, this is something I hope you will encourage your students to realize. We are focusing on the 4 years of high school, but we understand context. That is my favorite word at admissions, context. So if your student is at a boarding school versus a day school, what are those opportunities? Is your student jumping on a bus or 4 buses to get to school so that they're driving an hour each way? Is your curriculum starting at 7 in the morning and goes until 2 in the afternoon? Yeah, there's some time there. So we want that context so that we can understand realistically what their co-curriculars are. If your student is required to go home and take care of their little siblings after work or after school while mom works, that's a co-curricular. Babysitting is a co-curricular. You don't get paid, it's slave labor. So you should definitely talk about it. Our application asks for those extracurriculars, and our application also asks students to talk to us in questions. We have 8 questions as part of our application, not essays. Students must answer 4 of those 8 questions. The answer needs to be very clear and concise. I don't expect flowery language. I don't expect introduction and conclusions. I'm not looking at grammar, but I hope they spell check and grammar check. At the end of reading their application, do I understand the context of their academics and their personal life? Do I understand the accomplishments? That is the goal for our admissions process. Again, no transcripts, no letters of recommendation.
All right, private school. I feel like to do something since I can't really do this, so just, I'm going to go with it. All right, so Cuca brought up the common application. For the private schools, okay, one thing I should preface this is, again, see at the bottom, every institution is different. So I tried to go to the lowest common denominator for private schools in general. But the common application for the private schools is a wonderful application portal in that it allows you to apply to multiple institutions, several hundred actually, all with one click. Okay, so, however, some schools will also, maybe you'll give an option to apply to their institution with their own customized application. So at Laverne, we have 2 options. You can apply through the Common App, or you can apply for our personal app. Our personal app lets you also post status on Facebook and stuff. So if you're into that, maybe our personal one. We also do a holistic review. So Cuca talked about extracurriculars. I think there's some slave labor mentioned in there. We look at every application individually. Right? So what does that mean? Is that we're looking, for some students, they're going to be admitted based on the strength of their academics. But for other students, we're really compelled by their leadership outside the classroom. Yet other students, it might be their academic ability on the field, right? So every student may have unique aspects about them that makes us think, wow, this is the student we would like to add to our student body. What I always tell students, again, Cuca brought up all these great points. So if I could circle back the clock 18 years, and if I were a freshman in college, I'm also thinking to myself, would I want you to be my roommate? Would I want to be on a group project with you? Wouldn't I be so happy if I had a class with you? That's kind of what we're thinking when we're deciding which students to offer admission to. We're a little bit nicer, and some private schools are going to say, you know what, if you've taken a TOEFL or an IELTS, not necessarily going to ask for an SAT or an ACT, and yet other private institutions are going to say, we're going to need 1 from each set. So at my school, we're only going to require 1 of those exams. So we're a little bit nicer, okay? And also in that we're a little bit nicer is that if you take the SAT, we will take the best score from each section, even if they are from different test dates. So you had a really good math day in October, but your evidence-based reading, you knocked it out of the park in March. We're going to take those 2 separate scores. And I personally will not ask you for the writing essay section, but there are private schools that will. So again, it depends. I really should get that on a sweatshirt, right? It depends. What I always tell students, most private schools will require at least 1 personal statement or essay. What I always encourage students to do, tell us something about yourself I don't know from your application. We already know your name. We know where you go to high school. We get so many essays that start, let's see, what's what, 90, you know, on a November cloudy morning in 2000, I entered the world. Well, you know, we know your birthday, we know you were born. Tell us something else that we would not know just from looking at your application. We do require 1 letter of recommendation. Some schools require 2, some schools require 3. Really, what we're looking for is we want, from the counselor's perspective, we want to know about your student's academic ability, if there's things about the character, if there's, again, context. So if there's stuff about that we should know about, maybe if they struggled with a certain class and how they bounced back from it, those are the things that are helpful to us in a holistic review. And one thing I would say, we are curious about what you do outside the classroom. For those students that are able, what we like to see is increased responsibility and leadership. We don't expect a student to do 50 different clubs and organizations, but we like to see that students have an interest in something and that they've increased their leadership and the responsibility within that particular interest or passion. And again, just to sum it all up, I said all this stuff, but each institution is different. But what that means for your students is that there is increased flexibility, right? It's not a cookie cutter, one-fits-all formula for your students. So there is going to be a great institution or several institutions for your students based on their circumstances and based on their interests.
All right, almost done, almost done. Here we go. So let's ask questions here. Really quickly, round robin. Are international students looked at differently than those who are applying from California?
No.
Yes.
Kind of. It depends. The reality is there are some campuses that are looking at growth mode. So my campus, I'm going to point out a few other campuses. Riverside's campus, that's the director of admissions from Riverside. Shh. There are some campuses that are in growth mode. So yes, we're going to be looking at that. But the realistic picture is that we want international students. That's why we're physically here. So, hi, student.
So yes, again, we do kind of look at international students differently, but mostly not so much. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the last slide. This is the California. So basically, over here, we're talking about the articulation agreements and guaranteed transfer agreements. Like, how do these transfers really work, and do they really work? Okay, so this is what the typical system looks like. A California community college student could typically transfer into a UC, a CSU, a private, but not necessarily only in California. These kids could transfer outside California as well, or sometimes a very handful transfer even outside United States. So transfers are possible absolutely anywhere. Now talking, somebody asked me about the rigor or how does this really work. So, you know, lots of times I've got questions like, let's say if the student has done 1 or 2 years of his bachelor's degree in India, and now this kid is transferring to a university in the United States versus student doing 2 years at a community college and then transferring, okay? What makes sure that this is a 2+2 program is the articulation agreement, okay? So the articulation agreement pretty much talks about that all the classes that you are taking at the community college are going to be counted and are transferable to the next university, okay? That is the reason why it makes exactly 2+2, right? Sometimes you might end up taking certain classes which might not necessarily be transferable further, okay? So like sometimes students want to do certain advanced level classes, but they are not transferable, okay? So they do not get counted towards your bachelor's degree. So articulation agreements make sure all your credits are transferred. Now coming to the transfer admission guarantee, or also called as TAG, okay? So just to give you a little bit of perspective of somebody asking how many students actually get transferred. So I'm going to use a example from my community college, Foothill and De Anza. So we are about 3,200 international students, out of which I think 166 were accepted to UCLA last year, 126 were accepted to UC Berkeley. We had numbers from San Diego. We had 408 students who were accepted into UC San Diego. We have 456 to UC Davis, 740 to Santa Barbara. So in the transfers, they definitely work, okay? And the guaranteed admissions, or the tag that they call it, is basically a guaranteed transfer, which means if you score a certain GPA, okay, as described in the tag, you have a guaranteed admission. So at Foothill, we have guaranteed transfers with Santa Barbara. We have a guaranteed transfer with Riverside. We have guaranteed transfer with the other campuses like UC Irvine, UC Davis, okay? So there is slight difference between a guaranteed transfer and an articulation agreement, but practically students can transfer absolutely anywhere, whether there is an articulation agreement or not.
All right. There's a lot of resources, and you probably have some questions with regards to, what financial aid is available, some extra questions where you visually want to see the admissions process. I'll remind everyone that the slides will be available afterwards, but your cameras are out, so feel free to take a picture. I'll note that the University of California information with regards to financial aid, this is the cost of attendance for the University of California. Again, similar to what David said, as a public university, financial aid is limited to our students in the United States. So you will find that there are some endowments that still exist for international students, so very limited funds. We think of ourselves as an investment for students, so that's why we'll put that number up there. The information with regards to FAFSA, if you have dual citizens that are students on your campus, or you have US citizens, we encourage them to apply for that financial aid. Residency information is very complex. There could be a whole 2-hour session on how to be a resident when it comes to the admissions process. So instead, we gave you some links to get that information. Now, with that in mind, questions? Yes. Can you see the essay questions? Which essays are you asking for? Ah, yes. So my friend, no word of essay. The questions are public, yes. We'd be happy to share them with you.
I'd like to know regarding the transfers that you talked about from community college.
Yes.
Given that the graduation rate at many California universities is 6 years, what is the graduation? Oh, what? It's 5 to 6.
So when it comes to graduation rates, those will vary campus to campus and institution to institution. The University of California campus is when I go, oh, no, the majority of us are 4 years. We're really high on the national curve in 4 years. So if a student starts their 2 years at a community college and does everything we tell them to do, it would be finishing their last 2 years with us with an asterisk mark. Maybe engineering would be an extra year.
So my question was, how many of the students who were transferred actually complete their community college?
How many transfer students actually complete community college in 2 years?
So, I'll just give you an example of a student from Woodstock last year. So now this girl, she transferred to UCLA for pre-medicine and then realized pre-medicine is not really a thing, wanted to change to neuroscience. She came back for 1 more year. Okay, so she did additional 1 year and then transferred to NYU for neuroscience. So sometimes students, see if the student is going to be right on the game and he's doing exactly, as per the, so there is a transfer advisor in place who makes sure that he tells you that, these are the subjects and these are the, classes that you need to take in this particular quarter. And if you are following those guidelines, you will finish in 2 years. But sometimes, for biomedical students, we have some of the advanced classes which are non-transferable, but the student really wants to do them because that's like a addition to their profile. So they might take an extra quarter before they transfer. Is there an average? There is. That's something we don't know about.
It'll depend campus to campus.
Yeah.
I know you want a number. I'm not going to give you one.
The other issue is, so the other issue is, as a university accepts, community college transfers, they might spend time at a community college in remedial classes. Maybe they're not good in math. Maybe they need to get up to a point of a math class that will then transfer. Maybe they need English. There's a number of things that are remedial. So the student's taking units, taking credits, but they don't transfer. They're not part of the transfer core that will go to me as a Cal State or to the UC or to the privates. So when we say it depends, I always just say case by case. You know, it literally is case by case. Is a student taking 18 credits? Are they taking 12? Are they taking 15? Are they taking 2 remedial classes and 4 others that transfer? I mean, it is literally case by case, and every one of these students is individual in the way that they're approaching their transfers. Some are very aggressive, and they will do 18 units and transfer in 2 years, and we like those students. But there are other students that, you know, need to get up to speed in their first year, and so it is hard to like pinpoint a number.
But we still like them too.
Yes.
On the other side of that scenario, students that take AP exams, IB exams, HL level, that can give them credit that will count towards their ability to transfer. So some finish even sooner than 2 years at a community college. So it really is case by case.
It depends, yeah. I'll say this, of the international students on my campus, a lot of them are cost conscious. So my international students are graduating as fast as they physically can. They're not lingering for 3, 4, or as you're saying, 6 years. In fact, I've got a new trend that a lot of them are doing summer programs because we do the quarter system. So our first day of class is September 28th. And school doesn't end until June, so there's a 4-month break for them. They could take summer courses, and we don't charge international fees during summer. So my trend is for many of them to go, oh, I'll spend an extra 6 weeks in sunny California on the beach in the summer. Sure. We have time for one more question, yes?
For the IB students, do you accept and offer credit for SL as well as HL or only for HL?
Question is, for the IB student, do we give credit for SL and HL or only one? It will depend on the class. There are some SL classes that we will give extra credit for or weight the GPA in, and then IB exams with passing scores of 5 or better we love.
Yeah, there are certain courses where we will accept credit from the SLs.
Only HL.
So yeah, it's typically HL, but depends. You know, we have to check. We have a certain checklist, and we follow that, and depending on that.
My friends, we are done, and so we hope that you will call or email us with extra questions. I am so grateful that you woke up and you came to session 1 on day 2. So thank you for joining us.